now we are looking at the vertebral column. There are 4 curvatures and there are 5 regions. The curvatures, there are 4: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccyx. There is no coccygeal curvature. Coccyx and sacrum, they are in the same curvature, so we call it by one name, sacral curvature. But when you divide into different regions, coccyx will be separate. So you have 5 divisions, but there are 4 curvatures. Okay, and you can easily tell the bones, the cervical from the thoracic and lumbar, when they are together, because of the thickness of the bones and the way the spinous process is coming down. If you look carefully, these bones, they are much thin or slender compared to the rest of the bones. And then if you see the thoracic region, the spinous process is angling, it's bent and it's sharp compared to this one. If you see in the lumbar region, they are more in the transverse orientation and the process is blunt, it's not sharp. Okay, that gives you the first clue whether it's cervical, thoracic, lumbar, but we need to look more closely to see which one is what. So you will be labeled some part on any of the vertebral bones, and also you'll be asked where you will find it on the spine, whether it's cervical, thoracic, or lumbar. You don't have to tell whether it's T1, T2 or not. If you are in med school, you have to. Okay, not at this level. Okay, but you still have to differentiate your atlas and axis from the other cervical bones. So now let's see all the bones together. Okay, in this image, if you can see, I have placed all the cervical bones on my left, and on my right I have my thoracic and the lumbar bone. So when you just look at them, you can see some differences, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay, you see the size, the thickness of the body, okay? And you can see the process, whether it's coming down, it's sharp, pointed, or whether it's blunt, and all of that. And you can see the atlas and axis look different from the other cervical bones. So that's your C1 atlas, that's your C2 the axis, and these are the C3 to C7, because we have 7 cervical bones, right? What else can you tell to differentiate the cervical from the others? The transverse, the foramen, you find only in the cervical bones. Okay, so that's the next step. Here you see only the cervical bones. It's a much closer view, and you can see how the axis articulates with the atlas. Atlas is on the top, so the atlas uses the axis so it can move left or right or top or bottom, so you can say yes or no. Those are the only freely movable bones in the entire spine. So this is a single atlas. So we are going to look at some of the parts. You know, there are general parts for all the vertebral bones, some are specific. So how can you tell which is the front and back? You see the tubercle, that's the front of this bone. What do you call this part? Whether it's in the top or bottom? It's superior. The bone is like this, not like this. Okay? So meaning like this. So the shallow portion is like this. So this is the superior articular facet. What about this process? Transverse process. The whole foramen. Okay, you don't see any body here yet. You don't see the spinous process yet. So that's your axis. You may have this bone. They may ask you maybe name the bone, number the bone, or maybe name and number the bone. So depending on the question, either you have to say the name, number, or both. So read the question carefully. All right. This is what? Name the bone. Axis. Number the bone. Name and number the bone. Axis C2. Okay, good. So what is this part? Spinous process. See, now you start seeing the spinous process from C2, and the body also starts showing up, but it's below this structure. What is this structure? Dens, exactly. The dens are odontoid process. What is this? Facet, the superior articular facet. C3 to C7 look like this. Name the part. Body. Superior articular facet. Name the whole. Vertebral foramen. Do we have transverse foramen?
Yeah.
So it's not cervical. It's not cervical or cervical. Do we have? Yes, yes is the correct answer. I was just testing you. Spinous process. Is it superior or inferior view? How many inferior? How many of you say inferior? It's correct, inferior view. Because see, this has to point down like this in all the bones. So this is upside down. So in your exam, they may put the bone either way. There'll be one bone taped to the table you cannot touch. The other bone you can take and have fun. Okay, meaning you can look up. All right, moving on. Name the part. Transverse process. This area. Lamina. Between the two processes, this is the lamina. Between the transverse and spinous process, the pedicle is here, between the transverse process and the body. Okay? Where will you find this bone in the spine or vertebral column? Thoracic region. So it's a thoracic bone. Think. Name the part. Inferior articular facet. You guys are awesome, but you better stay that way until the exam. Okay. Name the bone. Lumbar bone. How did you say that? Look at the body, it's very thick, and also, yeah. Well, if you see the alligator, the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, in the lateral view, it looks like an alligator head or a giraffe head or a moose. See, you can see the head of the moose. That's lumbar. Another distinguishing feature between the thoracic and lumbar, if you look at the vertebral foramen, in this case thoracic is oval and is triangular in the lumbar. Alphabetically, O comes first, T comes next, and thoracic comes first and lumbar comes next. So you can look at the body, you can look at the spinous process, you can look at the vertebral foramen. There are many ways you can tell the difference straight away. Okay, cut.